All right, and so we're back, part 2, continuing on our talk about Wrestlemania Backlash. And we left off in the middle of discussing the triple threat between WWE Champion Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. And so I had came back, saw Lashley get thrown through these LED boards, and when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is the way they're justifying Lashley losing the title without losing it.
It looked wild, right? Like, yeah, it looked really almost certain at that point, because not only is he taken out in a big way, he's really far from the ring.
Yeah. And when we get back, we see a bunch more Haas fighting from Strowman and McIntyre. The crazy spot, I think, was on the outside. McIntyre doing, I think it was like an overhead suplex to Braun Strowman.
Yes, I love those spots. That man is so big, he almost didn't go over, but he did.
Yeah, and then after that, he tries to like wail on him more, and that's when Strowman pops McIntyre up and power bombs him straight through that announce table.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a bunch more of fighting between them. And then right when you think McIntyre is going to get the victory again, in comes Bobby Lashley for I forgot what he used to finish it. I think it was would they use the Hurt Lock?
Well, no, I think he hit a spear on Strowman for sure.
I remember him hitting a spear, but I totally forget what the finish was. But Lashley comes back in, and essentially to keep him looking strong, they show him coming back from being thrown into LED boards to come back in last second and retain that title.
Yeah, I don't know how he disposes of Drew, but I know he spears Strowman, and that's enough to put him away.
Yeah.
Because it's not a tap-out victory now.
Yeah, and honestly, it was a really great, surprising match.
I thought it was an interesting approach that Lashley was able to retain his title because the other Hosses had beaten each other up so badly.
Yeah. And, like I say, it still keeps him strong because though he kind of, technically, it's no disqualification, but it technically takes advantage and cheats in a way by taking advantage of the two men after their fight. It still keeps him strong because he came back through getting thrown through LED boards and all the spark that came from it. And he still powers his way through it to retain.
But yeah, the Drew and Braun were worse for wear and were easy pickings for Lashley to come back and dispose of very quickly. It was, I almost want to attribute him to like planning the whole thing out, but he didn't plan on getting thrown through that Tron.
Yeah. And as you mentioned in the previous episode about being thankful that we're recording on a Tuesday so we know it went down on Monday. Normally, people saw this and said, okay, so we're running Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley again at the next pay-per-view. But then Monday throws a curveball at us where Lashley has an open challenge for the main event. It's revealed it isn't a title shot, it's just an open challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But Kofi Kingston answers the challenge, and thanks to Drew, he pins Bobby Lashley through, I think it was like a roll-up.
Incredible, right? Kofi Kingston, who's about half the size of Bobby Lashley, couldn't get the job done against Brock Lesnar, who's about the same size as Bobby Lashley, getting the surprise pin over Lashley. What does that mean? Kingston? Number one contender?
Yeah, throws in a nice little curveball.
We certainly would not have brought up Kofi at all if we had both been talking about what's next for Bobby Lashley.
Yeah. That was definitely a huge curveball to me. I was like, wow, I was like, I guess, that freshens things up because now it opens up a potential feud where you don't necessarily have to have Lashley lose to McIntyre.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily have to worry about, once he beats McIntyre, who's left for him to face because Styles and Orton, two prominent challengers in the main event scene, are busy in the tag division.
Well, Orton is now officially a part of the tag team division. Jack.
Yeah. Orton and Styles are now occupied there. And, that only leaves you left with, who can we elevate to the main event scene? I mean... Again,
Jack, I don't want to burst your bubble, but we ain't elevating nobody. We're just going to blow a horn. And out of the forest of Canada is going to come barreling the Beast himself, Brock Lesnar. I think we're building Bobby Lashley to be this formidable, defending, unstoppable champion who's going to be stopped.
Yeah. Or, obviously looking back at last year, obviously I won't expect anyone to beat Lashley if he remains champion, but who knows, maybe they might Jey Uso someone into that main event scene, even if it's just for, those few couple months just to get some fresh challengers up in there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think you could kind of say they're doing with Kofi at least right now, just to get some fresh scenery in the main event title scene.
True. Mm-hmm.
But really great match, and we move on to really another division, which in a sense you can really say doesn't have to worry about this whole sense of where do we go after with each challenger, because they've done a perfect job of transitioning from each challenger to the next with Universal Champion Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm. Defending his title against the Cesaro.
Yeah, and honestly, much to no one's surprise, a lot of us were just so happy to see Cesaro getting this opportunity.
His first ever main event in 10 years with the company?
Yeah. And I think they even mentioned this is his first time challenging for a main title in a while.
Yeah. Certainly his first go at the Universal title.
Yeah. I think the only other time I remember him challenging for the main title was Elimination Chamber 2014 when he was in there. It was him, Christian, Sheamus, Randy Orton, I think Cena, and Daniel Bryan.
Right. Hey, remember, Jack, we were talking a month ago after WrestleMania, he just beat Seth Rollins, and we wondered what this was going to do for him. We didn't realize how quickly it was going to do it for him.
Yeah, we were talking much like Owens, maybe later this year or into next year we see him get into this feud, but right out
There's this funny period in the fall when they're willing to try some pretty wild things.
Yeah.
Because it's not WrestleMania season. But wow, yeah, here we are.
Yeah, very interesting, but as I mentioned, a lot of us just so happy Cesaro gets the opportunity. Now, based on Roman's character, do we go into the match thinking Roman, who's been built up this much, is going to lose on what is essentially a B pay-per-view? Not much hope. Potentially, they've done crazier things, but...
You know, in the other matches where the champion retained, that was really telegraphed early, right? We weren't going to do this big change on a B show. Tag team champions, it was a perfect timing. Roman, though, he throws just the tiniest monkey wrench into his own plan. Before the match starts, he does do something that makes you think, has he done himself in? Has his own hubris been his undoing? What does he do, Jack, before the match even starts?
Much to my dad's, how would you say?
Relief.
He tells Jey Uso to stay in the back and watch him go.
Right.
Essentially telling him, watch me do it on my own, and just take.
And he's really torn up about Jimmy, his brother, really pushing back, not acknowledging him. So he says, "Go find your brother."
Yeah.
Right? Where's his allegiance? Is it with Roman or his brother? So he's not going out with this right-hand man.
Yeah, and so that definitely was a little thing where it's well, can he now? And there was even a point in the match where a lot of times they were panning out that hard camera, so it made you think someone's coming down as per usual, but the spoiler, that moment doesn't come to much of a lot of people's surprise. But getting into the match, what did you think about it?
It was a good match. You're right. I still walked away from that night saying that the Lumberjack match was my favorite, right? But I really wanted this one to win me over. I like Cesaro, and I like the moves that he does, and I was rooting for him as this guy who never got his moment. This, is and was billed. The commentator said this is the most important match of this man's career, and you think no matter where this guy's been or what he's fought for, he's never fought Roman Reigns, the biggest name in this company today, for one of the biggest titles in that company. So you're absolutely right to say this is it. This guy has got a good theme song behind him, right? His character makes sense in a way that it hasn't for 10 years.
Yeah. He started improving on the promo game. You know,
that's my one thing about him. I'm still not won over by him on the mic.
Yeah.
But I like that he keeps trying, or that they keep giving him opportunities to try.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping he channels a lot of his time from the bar as they push him in this main event scene. Because during the bar, him and Sheamus really played off well with each other when it came to promos. But the one thing you mentioned was how they said this was like the biggest like match and moment of his career. And honestly, for like the one time, as much as they say that for a lot of different guys, this actually felt like it was Cesaro's biggest match, biggest moment, because in a way it was almost make or break.
Oh, for sure. Is he going to get another shot at this after tonight if it doesn't work? Or is he going to get eaten by zombies in 3 weeks?
Yeah, and the biggest thing to me also was like, as I mentioned, make or break. It's mainly make or break because though like throughout the past 10 years, Cesaro has definitely shown people his abilities and stuff and really won people over. It's almost in a sense like a headcanon of not only trying to win over the fans with this match, but essentially trying to win over the people in the back, because as they built it up, first essentially title match and like first singles titles match since his career started in the WWE 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is essentially his make or break match to the people in the back to kind of prove, can I hang with the main event guys to not only stay in this scene, but maybe convince you that later down the line to give me another opportunity and even win this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I got my head going up and down, right? I'm working because it's Sunday night, but I'm also looking up because I hear Big Move and I hear Michael Cole. But Cesaro somehow gets cut up, like, a lot. Like, on his back and on his shoulder.
Yeah.
What the heck happened to that guy?
Yeah, he was definitely getting opened up a lot. And there was even, like, a bad spot, I think, like, on his neck that looked, like, really bad. Like,
it's wild. Like, there's nothing sharp, I don't think, except maybe them steel steps.
Yeah.
What, any spots stand out to you? I love his pop-up European uppercut, always.
Yeah. I also loved the first springboard uppercut that he did that caught Roman off guard. Where, like, he whipped him into the ropes, but because he still had his back turned, he didn't notice. As soon as he turned around, Cesaro had springboarded off those ropes and hit him with the uppercut.
And it's a small, tiny move, but it means the world that Roman rolls out of the ring to collect himself, standing next to Paul Heyman after a flurry from Cesaro.
Yeah, and I even love how they continue building the story where later on in the match, Cesaro tries to hit it again, but this time Roman, remembering the first time, turned around in time and catches Cesaro in the air.
That happens a lot, and I love it when it happens when a wrestler goes for the move for the second time in a match. It's one of two things. Either they're not going to hit it the second time because the guy's wisened up, or it didn't work the first time, but this time it's going to happen.
Yeah, and similarly, throughout the match, Roman keeps trying to get that guillotine in on Cesaro.
Yes.
And he just keeps reversing it and finding ways to get out of it.
Picking Roman up with his strength. Goodness gracious. One spot that Cesaro tries, fails, and tries, and then eventually gets is that suplex from the outside into the ring. Beast.
Yeah, Cesaro just proving his inhumane strength. And, like, there was this one specific moment where I think it was when Cesaro had Roman in the sharpshooter. And you see that hard camera start panning out from the side, and instantly my dad and I went, oh, okay, Jay's coming out. Jimmy's coming out. Someone's coming out.
You've been hurt too much, Jack.
But then, Roman simply gets out, and they continue going on and on. And the spot I loved the most was that you see, like, the finishing part of it is Cesaro is stuck in a guillotine, but, like, he powers out. But then he powers out and kind of, like, tries, like, to find his way and try and get away from Roman. But then Roman, like, finds a way to flip it back into the guillotine. And because of, like, the previous attempts, he's just worn down at this point. And so that's the closing spot is Cesaro passes out from the guillotine, doesn't tap, and Roman retains.
And his head is perfect for this move because he's bald and he's pale. And in the guillotine, his head turns red and purple, and you can see so many veins.
Yeah.
So gross. But I think, I don't think he's going to be eaten by zombies in 3 weeks. I think he really had a good showing. And the only reason why Cesaro had to stop is because his body stopped. Only because Roman was successfully able to stop blood flow.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
And I really loved Cesaro's selling of the move because, like, right after, like, you see on his face, like, it's almost like he doesn't even know where he is, like, as he's, like,
oh, yes.
To the
he woke up all really kind of afraid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, unsure of where he was or who's around him.
Yeah, that was really good. And at first, I'll admit, I was kind of upset because I was like, when I had seen at the start that Roman told Jay not to go out there, a part of me wanted Jay to go out there and just help him win.
Yeah.
My mind was just like, out of everyone Roman has faced since aligning with Jay, you're going to tell me Cesaro the one that gets, like, beat clean in a sense?
Yes.
Because I was like...
you know what? I think the commentary did actually a really good job of, like, helping Cesaro with that. Because you're right. This is one of the first times, if not the only time, Roman's actually beat a person without Jay's help. But what they said before the match started was, this is Cesaro's first ever main event. This is Roman's 34th title related match. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there's just an experience level that Cesaro is in the process of building, and he can walk away saying, you know why I lost? Because I've never been put in that position, but put me back in it. I bet I can do better. Roman, This is old hat for him. He does this as easily as he breathes. Goodness.
Yeah, and that was like my thought process. It was like, he beat Owens all those times with Jay. He beat Daniel Bryan with Jay's help and Edge's help at Fastlane. He beat both Edge and Ray technically with Jay's help. Daniel Bryan and Edge, I mean. So I was like, there was like a part of me, I was like, man, Cesaro's going to be the one that has to lose clean. But then I saw the ending and I felt okay with it because I was like, he didn't tap, he didn't get pinned. He went out, as you said, because his body gave out on him.
And you know what? Now that you bring up how the night ended, the match is over, but there's more happening. I was so conflicted about what happened because I thought there's a weird way to end a show, a weird way to end a pay-per-view. And if this was what they were going to do, why wasn't this match sooner? They should have ended with, like, Lashley winning,
Yeah. I
don't think a pay-per-view is a place where, like, we do this, like, extra credits, extra scene during the credits thing,
Yeah.
But what happens, Jack? Roman reigns supreme. Cesaro's figuring out where he is, waking up.
Yeah. So finally Jay comes out, and he's kind of just having, like, a stare down with Roman, and to kind of prove, as you mentioned at the start, where Roman was questioning where his allegiance lied, he goes, attacks Cesaro, starts beating him up, and just when you think it's all done, Seth Rollins' music hits. He walks out in his weird suit. He starts beating up on
Jack.
He starts beating up on Cesaro and even gets Cesaro's, I believe it was his arm, in a chair and, like, hits it against the ring post.
Yeah. Like, instead of jumping on it to Pillmanize it, he runs the arm and chair combination into the post. Look devastating. Look bad.
Yeah. And so a lot of people were saying, make Cesaro strong because not only did he survive that, but then he had to go through the 2 beatdowns afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, also a lot of people were kind of confused, like, as you mentioned, like, it's kind of weird to have that be the end.
Yeah. You kind of wonder, at some point, Seth Rollins is probably going to challenge for the title too, right?
So I saw someone say that apparently, again, this is their, like, head canons and trying to book long-term storytelling. They were trying to say that the colors on Rollins' suit, because it was a white suit and then it had, like, all these different colors, like, on the shoulders as if it was paint dripping down it. They tried to say that the colors on the suit are supposed to signify and allude to SummerSlam's colors and allude to the fact that that's when we're going to get Reigns versus Rollins.
I mean, it's an interesting... And, like, imagine this, Jack. Imagine Rollins can beat Roman. Imagine he can take the belt off of Roman. And then imagine, Jack, here's my headcanon. Cesaro takes it off Rollins. Goodness gracious.
I think that would be a smoother transition and a more welcome transition.
You know, when I just played it out in my head, it makes me look forward to it. We don't know what's going to happen because there is Money in the Bank looming in the distance. It always is a big monkey wrench into any of our story that we write ourselves. And, you know, I like the idea of Rollins standing up to the tribal chief saying, hey, I've beaten you before.
Yeah. And as I mentioned about the whole smoother transition thing, I think fans would be more welcoming towards Cesaro beating Rollins rather than Cesaro beating Reigns. Because as I mentioned here, there was a lot of people that not only didn't believe Cesaro would beat Reigns, but they didn't think Reigns' reign should come to an end here. But when you do it, when you prolong it this way, where Rollins beats him, maybe you have a potential backlash from the fans of not liking that choice as much, but then it sets up even bigger support for when Cesaro takes the title off of him, because if fans don't like Rollins winning that much, they'll probably be overjoyed with Cesaro beating Rollins for it, since they didn't essentially like him or want it in the first place. Only two people should take the belt off of Reigns: Otis and Damian Priest.
Oh, man. One right after the other. We'll have the reign of Otis for a year and a half, and then Priest will take it off of him in a 5-star classic. If Damian Priest and Otis stood side by side, they'd be the number 10. But overall, Jack, a pretty good show.
Yeah, they've kind of been on a roll in a sense. I feel like definitely since Royal Rumble as the most recent pay-per-view I can think of, they've been on a roll.
Absolutely.
I want to say since Survivor Series, but I'm kind of trying to remember how I felt about TLC, and I don't really know if TLC was as consistent as, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, Fastlane, Mania, Backlash.
Right, yeah. Like, you definitely think that something has changed. I think it has to do, too, with the number of matches that they're committing to do, and I think that has to do with, like, just wanting to mitigate COVID spread, right? Like, the fewer number of people here, the better. And that means a shorter, more succinct show. I think these pay-per-views are better shows overall than their weekly product.
Yeah.
Actually, let me change that. I think these pay-per-views are better than Raw.
Yeah, and like, now that you bring up Raw, like, I think it's a perfect point to bring up. Most of these pay-per-views last maybe, 3.5 hours long? Raw is the same length. It shouldn't be the same length as your monthly pay-per-views.
It just seems to get less done,
Yeah, and like, it essentially shows that for the most part, they're trying to scramble to fill 3 hours when they really shouldn't. Like, the format they should go to is copy SmackDown with its 2 hours. And my pitch to them would be, I get it. You got deals with network companies. You can't really get around just chopping that 1 hour off. Yeah. So my pitch would be, do 2 hours of Raw and then just do an hour, or do an hour of Raw talk. Or if you can't find a way to fill 1 hour with Raw talk, then do 2.5 hours of Raw and 30 minutes of Raw talk.
I just want, I'm at a point where I know it's what's the word? It falls on deaf ears to want a shorter Raw. So what I want is just 3 hours of storytelling, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know how and why after a month I don't think anything's happened. I don't think anything's changed. I don't think I'm missing anything. That's the thing, Jack. I don't think I'm missing anything.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely, like, on display between the two of us whenever we do these weekly shows, because we always mention we don't keep up, so we don't know what goes on the weekly shows, but we keep up enough at least with, like, the results to at least know why certain matches are happening on the big pay-per-view card. But
Right.
other than that, as you mentioned, it's like there's nothing I'm missing whenever I don't tune in. So
Compare that to AEW, and I don't want to be that guy, but John Moxley versus Nagata, I think, dang, I'm not going to see that anywhere else. I might see it in New Japan, but it might be not for a while. Goodness gracious, on American television, on our time zone, right? Like,
yeah.
It had me thinking, what am I going to do Wednesday night?
Yeah.
I didn't watch.
Or with NXT a lot, whenever they throw stipulation matches at you, you kind of have that similar thinking where, well,
is
NXT
tonight
doesn't
Bronson
do
Reed versus Johnny Gargano in a steel cage for the North American title?
Yes.
Jack, there's no equivalent for that on Raw. I'm not as hyped for any two people to do a thing than those two tonight.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, and the thing that NXT and you could even say AEW does well is even if like certain competitors fight kind of like a lot, they'll throw in something like a stipulation match so that not only do you know it's a special occasion for it, but something might happen, like for in this case maybe a title change happens, so it entices you to at least ponder whether you tune in or not. Whereas with Raw, it's kind of like maybe like a couple hours before the show even goes live, they'll be like, okay, here's what we finally have prepared for tonight, and you look at it and it's like, what's making me tune in? A lot of these matches maybe happened last week. All you're really advertising is that they're going to appear on Raw, nothing about whether it's a match, a promo, so it's like there's nothing enticing there.
Right. So, there you go. Sheamus, I love him, but I don't care about his open challenges. And Alexa Bliss's Playground has become a talk show, and somehow the new women's tag team champions found their way to the set somehow. But I really liked that segment. I really liked Tamina's reaction, and even Natty's like, calm down, we're okay. Like, no, we're not. You know, it's really. I thought that was really good. I thought all participants involved gained something from that very short amount of time.
Yeah, and you see it on SmackDown too, where, you know, even if they don't get as much time, there's like at least some type of like build to it, you know. Mm-hmm. Like the IC title scene right now, it's looking like somewhere down the line we may be getting Apollo versus Big E versus Owens versus Zayn in some type of fatal 4-way.
I think it's happening this Friday.
Yeah, so you know they're at least building stories, building.
Goodness gracious, that's such a big match. Raw, poor Raw. They're there, Raw. They're there. I think, yeah, I know what's the root cause of its biggest problems. It's an 80-year-old funny old man who won't relinquish power. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk Backlash with you, and I have a special question. How much time we got?
17 minutes.
Excellent, Jack. I thought about this in preparation for today. I wonder if you can recall a special podcast episode that we recorded in April 2020 concerning WWE's release of about a dozen people.
I do remember that.
What I thought about was the fact that we talked about those wrestlers who were released from WWE, their history with the company, our relationship with their performances, and ultimately kind of guessed or thought about what was next for them. Yeah. You remember who Jack you thought was going to be the standout performer who had the most potential from that group?
If you give me a second, let me pull up who were the 2020 releases.
Okay.
Because it's so difficult to think about this.
And I'll tell you what, it only crossed my mind because Cultaholic is a YouTube channel I follow who cover all things wrestling. They did a great video capturing or summarizing where everyone who was released in April 2020, where they are now, and what they're doing. And so it was really wild to see, you know, all that those guys have been doing. And it's only been a year, Jack.
Yeah. And I even mentioned it when I was discussing, like, it was one of my episodes with Dom, where we kind of just went with the flow and, like, see what topics came up. And when WWE came up, because of, they essentially did it again. They had 2021. This year they released a lot of different talent. I brought up to him how last year the same thing happened. And, you know, I told him, it was before the 2021 releases happened, and I told them, oh, people were mad about it, and obviously they had a right to be angry because it was like during the start of the pandemic, jobs weren't guaranteed for a lot of these wrestlers, so a lot of people were upset because how are you going to release these people during this difficult time?
Right.
But I told them,
and what also like compounds everyone's frustrations with these releases is that the company just sort of is always making money. So like it doesn't seem like money is the biggest issue here, except it kind of always is. Yeah,
and I even told Dom, there's people that are still kind of angry about them today, but the one reason I wasn't so angry about it was because everyone found new homes, essentially. And that's what I'm hoping for with the recent releases, because obviously they have to wait, as I mentioned, Dom, 90 days before they can compete anywhere. I have the list up now, and honestly, looking at it, it's difficult to think who I thought was the breakout from this.
Interestingly, I don't remember who I thought was going to be the breakout, but I remember yours.
Who did I say? Because I don't remember for sure.
Ready? You said EC3.
I see it now in the middle, and I could see why I thought that, because, he essentially he was one of the biggest question marks, because everyone was like, he had almost everything you wanted, and it was weird to see him get released.
This Cultaholic presenter, he said, I wonder if Vince knew that he wasn't actually related to Dixie Carter. But Jack, just taking a look at that list, who do you think's had the best year since leaving the company? While Jack peruses the list, I'll just remind the listeners of a few names who were released from WWE a year and a month ago. Kurt Angle, Rusev, Drake Maverick, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, Eric Young, EC3, Kurt Hawkins, Lio Rush, Heath Slater, Aiden English, Sarah Logan, Mike Chioda, the referee, Primo and Epico Colon, Eric Rowan, Mike and Maria Kanellis, Zack Ryder, No Way Jose, Cassius Ohno, Curtis Axel, and Tino Sabatelli.
So, looking at the list, it's difficult. So, Drake Maverick ended up returning to the company, as we saw.
Yes, he did.
And he had that really good cruiserweight title feud with Santos Escobar.
He's currently in one of my favorite tag teams with Killian Dane. I think their theme song is incredible, and I bought it on iTunes.
Yeah, so I don't think I'll necessarily count Maverick just because he was brought back.
Yep.
But it's difficult to say, because looking at the list, the three people that are essentially on, essentially big time television are Rusev and the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. So normally seeing that, you would say, well, they're better off. They're on AEW. They're on, nationwide television. Rusev just won the TNT championship over there.
Yes, so he did.
You could say, they're in better times. But honestly, like, when I followed, like, a lot of the different works, I think Lio Rush is up there with the work he's been doing, not only on the independents, but MLW and even AAA, even though there was a lot of, like, weird controversy that went down where he won one of their titles, but he wasn't supposed to, and so they got it back to the guy who was supposed to have the title.
Yeah, Lio Rush also has wrestled for New Japan in a couple of high-profile tournaments that I missed because it's been a busy year.
Yeah. EC3, despite injury, he's found himself back at Ring of Honor and kind of essentially found himself a home. And I think the third option I might say is Eric Young, just because not only did he go into Impact, win their world title, obviously he dropped it pretty soon, but he's finding a way to stay relevant even after that by having, his own little faction out there. And similar to EC3, he kind of went down with injury, so you're not seeing much of him now. But those are kind of my three where, if you're not going with the obvious picks of the Good Brothers and Rusev just because they're on, national television like they were with WWE, I think those three found success out of, like, the entire group. But,
yeah, I agree. I was pleasantly reminded by that video that Eric Young had won the TNA title or Impact Championship, and I was like, yeah, he did, didn't he? Gosh, that's like a huge 180 from where he was with the company. Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, are two others that I didn't hear you mention, but that have found a place in Impact, and they're regularly occurring characters who have feuded with each other and have sort of found their own sort of groove in that company. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows are currently flanking Kenny Omega in his quest for all the gold, right? They've had the tag team championships themselves, but also are just a part of that inner promotional storyline.
Yeah, and
which has been exciting to follow.
Yeah, and a lot of the other talent have found homes, as I mentioned. I think also a lot of them are still taking bookings and kind of waiting for the independent scene to really come back after this whole pandemic thing.
And I think I was too really surprised and pleasantly so about Lio Rush. You're like, you're right. He has been been all over the place.
Yeah, and it's really pleasant to see because everywhere he's going, he's really just showcasing his abilities and all this, And it kind of shows the benefit maybe of why at least for talent maybe you're not using, you should allow them to take other bookings at the time just so they can at least start broadening the audience so that they comes back to you when they start.
I saw somebody's take on Instagram on Jon Moxley saying he's really living his best life because he's wrestling for AEW, so he's prominently on TV weekly, but he's also wrestling for New Japan, so getting to fight his idols or some of the bucket list opponents like Nagata and Suzuki. But he's also doing tiny GCW shows where he's going up against Nick Gage and hurling fluorescent light tubes at each other. So he's in a company that allows him to do those things, and I don't think he is in want of experiences. Surely he was at Titan Towers.
Yeah, and honestly, there's still a couple of releases that I'm waiting to see if they still want to continue wrestling and pop up, Cassius Ono, otherwise known the Independents as Chris Hero. I know he said he's planned to, but right now he's waiting it out. I think there was someone else who had said, I forgot who it was, that they wanted to wrestle but are waiting out. The other one was AOP, who had gotten released later in the year. We haven't seen much from them. I'm wondering if maybe they still continue as a team somewhere.
Being so big, it would be wasted potential if they didn't.
Yeah, the main one I saw was someone saying maybe we see them pop up in Japan. I think maybe if they pop up in Japan, then they're just waiting for restrictions to lighten, so it's easier for them to get to and from.
Eric Rowan is another one that, he's just... I think I like him because when he was with Daniel Bryan, it's nobody noticed. But, he would constantly wear these great band shirts. And you're like, who let him go on TV with this awesome band on it, lots of heavy metal. It was just a neat part of his character that was very subtle. And he's such a big guy, and he could do a lot, but he's only wrestled a couple of times in the year. He's one that I hope kind of keeps doing this thing.
Yeah. And I think similarly, obviously, it's not a full confirmed report, but I think if the reports about Bray Wyatt, who's taking time away due to the tragic passing of Brody Lee, Luke Harper, as WWE fans know him, I think maybe we might be seeing something similar with Rowan, where much like Bray, he's probably taking at least these past couple months off just to properly grieve for that, and then maybe we'll see him. Cause
you're absolutely right.
I really do hope we see Rowan at least somewhere. I wouldn't mind seeing him touring the independents before finding a home, maybe somewhere on Impact.
There was a time where a guy his size could also do a lot of damage in New Japan, just being a big old guy to throw people around. The Lance Archer, perhaps, of 2022 or 21.
Yeah. And we have about 5 minutes left, so I want to ask you from the recent releases of 2021, maybe so if potentially we revisit this back in 2022, we can look back and say, out of the releases that have happened so far in 2021, who do we think is our breakout?
I think I know your answer, but I'm gonna put my money on. I should have known you were going to ask this. But I'm going to give two answers. If you insist that I pick one, I'll pick one. But I'm going to say Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. I think if they stick together as a unit, there's a big old audience that want to see them do well in different places, and I will follow and support them. Yeah. If you press me to pick one of them to be the breakout star, I think I'm going to say Billie Kay. She's just so much funnier than Peyton Royce. Bless her heart. I love them both. But Billie Kay is so funny.
Yeah. And
she'd be a better librarian than Blue Pants.
Yeah. A part of me wants them to stick together, have a run in Impact with their women's tag titles. Maybe show up in AEW. I know people want Peyton Royce on her own to show up in AEW with her husband, but
yes.
I prefer if the two of them stick together. My breakout star is Tucker. No, I'm playing. I think listeners of the podcast should know, and I think you're alluding to it. My breakout star from this release class, if he can stay healthy, is Samoa Joe.
And I don't want to speak ill of Samoa Joe. I thoroughly enjoyed his time in TNA. I'm glad I caught it because who knew that we'd be longing for him to be the top guy in the breakout star? And really, he had that moment in TNA. Short-lived, perhaps. But, I wonder just at what point he is in his career. Does he still have a lot in the tank? I take for granted how old any of these guys are, but he reminds me of Daniel Bryan, where it's like, I know we all love Daniel Bryan, we all want him to be on top all the time, but if we want new stars, we got to push Daniel Bryan aside, and we got to say, you know what, thank you, retire, we got to give Cesaro his moment. My one fear was that Cesaro match was going to turn into something about Daniel Bryan, because I'm like, stop, Cesaro's never going to bloom if we keep suffocating him with other stars.
Yeah, and more so when I say Samoa Joe, I kind of want him, like as you're alluding to, I kind of want him just to go on that like retirement tour if he's healthy.
Got it, yes. Wouldn't it be incredible, Jack? Because Kenny Omega's beaten more than a few folk. He's going to run out of folk. What if the man he can't beat is the Samoan submission machine?
Yeah, and even if you give that title to Samoa Joe, because obviously injury returns, don't give him that long of a run, but at least give him some type of run with a title. And he'll make money out of it.
Comes in, beats Samoa Joe, transitional champion. There's a lot of places in history for those folk.
Yeah. But I just want to see him maybe have a couple of matches around the world.
I feel you, Jack.
Yeah. But, so, we'll close off here, sir. We want to thank the audience for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. As always, the door is open for anyone and everyone to come on here and talk to us about anything and everything. I want to thank you all for joining. I've been your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guest,
Mr. Solis.
Thank you all, and as always, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.